Are we going live? Yes, we're live. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the I Want to Believe chat show. And I'm Peter Wren with Chatty Cathy and the lovely Lynda. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Yeah, it's nice to be back this week. It's nice to have my co-host here. Haven't seen you guys for a couple weeks.
Yeah, no, it's good to be back too. It's good to see both of you. I know, right? Chatty Cathy and lovely Lynda. I love it.
I couldn't think of a more suitable nickname because
which one's which?
I know. Oh my gosh.
Okay. Cathy, would you like to introduce this week's guest?
I would love to introduce this week's guest. So this week so for those that are just tuning in, if you're just new to our show, this is a interview show where we do bring on experts and leaders in the paranormal field, the supernatural field. And today we have on Katie Turner. So Katie, besides being an investigator, she is also part of a couple of TV shows. Do you want to introduce them, Katie? Tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, so I've been very grateful to be able to be part of a couple really great shows, along with my friend Lynda over here. And so it all started with the show called Paranormal Survivor. I started as a paranormal investigator, and I submitted some stories. They had asked me to submit some stories, and so I did. And from there, they just they liked what I had to say, and they asked me to be a part of it. So I ended up going on as a consultation, and I hate the word expert, but that's what they label us as. And so it kind of went from there. And then fast forward a few years. So I started in season 1 with Paranormal Survivor. After a few seasons, they actually were producing a show called My Paranormal Nightmare. Mm-hmm. And they asked me if I would be willing to explain my story. They wanted to know more about me and kind of how I got into the paranormal world and how I became a psychic medium. And so I was able to explain my story and kind of relive those moments when I first started.
So, drum roll, what is your story?
So it's really kind of cool. I grew up in a really neat family. My family is very, very spiritual. Very open, very accepting. And so, to be honest with you, I don't remember life not being psychic or not having sensitivities. And so even before I can recollect, my parents would tell me stories of things I would tell them, or predictions, or loved ones that were passed over that would send messages. And so as I got a little bit older, 12, 13 years old, a lot of these occurrences were happening relatively quickly and pretty profoundly. And so this was before the internet. I'm dating myself. I was in libraries. I was watching documentaries. I was doing absolutely anything I could do to try and gain some knowledge to understand it. I wasn't afraid of it. I just wanted to know more. And so my parents, again, so supportive. I would tell them things and they would kind of engage me. And so fast forward into high school, it was uncomfortable. I didn't understand these emotions. My empathic abilities were really getting at that point. And as a teenager, right, your hormones are all up and down at that point.
Especially with being empathic too, that would be really,
it was tough. Fast forward into my college years, and I decided I wanted to start paranormal investigating. And so very amateurly, may I add, we would go to these abandoned locations, couple friends and myself, and we would just take a camera, take an audio recorder, and just play. Fast forward, once I was done college and became the adult I am today, I developed a paranormal team. And so it started out as, that's what we did. And it got to the point where, everybody starts to get evidence. And I certainly don't need that to prove paranormal is real, but we kind of devote our time to helping people. And so that's what our main focus is: children, people who, suffer, I don't want to say severe haunts, but the people that are afraid. Right. It was at that point when we were going into locations where I'm from, there's a lot of residential areas. We don't do a lot of commercial commercial as much as homes. And so people ended up coming into my office every day and they were asking me for readings. You know, they'd say, we heard you went into this location and you could read the spirits in the place. You know, can you give me a read? And I was like, no, that's not for me. And so it happened so much that I ended up having to quit my full-time job. And so, you know, here I sit today, I'm a full-time psychic. So when I'm not investigating, I'm giving readings.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is
So it's a pretty stellar story, but yeah.
I like that. I like that your family was really supportive. I mean, that is incredible because often you don't hear that. You hear, well, you know, everybody thought I was crazy. So, I mean, that's something that's really, I mean, key, I think, Katie.
Yes. And, you know, I did have those moments where I thought I was crazy. I was never bullied for it. I was never shushed or shunned. But I did experience a lot of these things to what I thought was alone. Looking back at it now that I'm adult, I realized it really wasn't that bad. But that's one of the reasons why I work with a lot of children. And it's not something I charge for. I really want these parents to understand that some of these instances are real. It's not always an invisible friend. It's not always a monster in the closet, that these things can in fact happen, and not to shy away from it. Because I really feel that a lot of adults with mental health issues, it really was psychic senses or some sort of sensitivity that they never honed in on as a child. And, you know, I don't want that to continue for people.
Yeah. Especially back in, if you look back at like the, let's say 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, going from there was a lot of incidents where people were talking about things that they were seeing, or, you know, and if you don't have that help moving forward, you are going to be deemed crazy, or you're going to think that you're crazy, because how are you denying that somebody is right in front of you and everybody else is telling you, no, it's not there. It's you're nuts, you know?
You know, Cathryn, you know, now I say to people, when people say to me, prove that paranormal is real, prove it exists. I say to them, prove it doesn't. Prove it doesn't. When you can prove that it doesn't exist, then we'll chat. But everybody's, you know, just because you've never witnessed a specific type of animal or species doesn't mean it's not there. They're discovering these every day. And I think the fact that we have social media, the fact that we have the World Wide Web, and open-minded individuals is really changing the paranormal field. It's bringing more of a para-unity feel, and we're able to kind of feed off of each other and feel that we're welcomed into certain groups. And so, you know, I think that's changing. It's changing lives.
It really is. My son is actually very, very sensitive. I'm also a psychic medium, but you know, but he especially when he was younger, he was super, like, it was crazy. And he would tell, it was actually one of his teachers that came to me and said, you know, your son, have you ever heard of like indigo children? She's like, he's the strongest I've ever seen. And you know, he had that support in the school where he was able to go to at least one teacher with some of the things that he would see on the playground. This is like at 4 or 5 years old, kindergarten. And, you know, or she would, you know, he would walk up to kids and say, sorry about, you know, you got into trouble for this last night, or this happened, or, you know, there was times where he didn't want to play on the playground because, you know, there was somebody out there. And it was hard, you know, at that age, you know, and of course you've got abilities and you're trying to explain it to other teachers or even parents, you know, and there was no help for a long time. Yeah.
I'm pretty lucky. I live in a small community that everybody knows what I do. Can't hide it, right? Everybody knows everybody else's business. But they're also pretty open-minded. It's a funny story to talk about energies and as a child. So one of my very first energy experiences was when I was I was either kindergarten or grade 1. And the teacher phoned home and talked to my parents and said, you know, Katie, she's a smart cookie, but she's just not in there. You know, I'll ask her a question and she's kind of off in left field. She'll answer the question, but she's on to something else. And so that evening, my parents, you know, set me aside and said to me, you know, Katie, what's going on? Like, what's the matter? And I said to them, well, I could see all the colors. And both of them were looking at me like, the colors? What do you mean the colors? And what it was when the teacher was standing at the blackboard, I could see her aura. And I was so focused and transfixed on the different colors that even though I was paying attention, I was really kind of focused on that. Well, It's funny enough, my son, last year, the same thing happened. I get a message home, and the teacher said, you know, knowing what I do, I think it's time you need to have a chat with your son because he's having these experiences. And so it was kind of cool because I was able to explain to him and allow him to understand it, and I could understand it, and the teacher could understand it. So he's experiencing these things safely.
Good. Oh, and it's nice that you had that person come to you as well, which is amazing, because the kids need that, especially in the school system where everything is so rigid and everything is so, you know, individual, like not individualized. It's so, it's hard for a kid when that's experiencing these things. So, I mean, thankfully, thank God for people like you, like that have that and it can explain it.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. Unfortunately, I'm sure you can reiterate and explain not always sunshines and rainbows. People seem to think you have this incredible gift, but I work with the police. I work in missing persons cases. I work with murder cases. I work with, you know, and it's not always sunshines and rainbows.
No.
Sometimes you're it's not a happy place. If the teachers they died, they're showing you, you know, they were traumatized, and that's not always a good feeling. So I think it's something that needs to be taken with a grain of salt. It needs to be well respected, and it's something that needs to be taken seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. So when you're doing paranormal investigations for clients and people that need help with that kind of thing, what's your kind of your methodology in regards to that? How do you approach that with someone that needs help?
So I will, myself and my team, each member on my team has kind of a different role. So I like to go in blind. I like to go in and get my own feel. So, you know, I tell them, please don't tell me a lot. I'll either send it to somebody else and they can take the information down, or I get the most minimum amount of information as possible until we get to the location. Sometimes it's a phone call. But if we go, we will do an interview. At that point, we will deem whether, you know, if my vibe and the other team members' vibes are kind of staying in sync with what the individual's having. We've had scenarios where there's been mental health issues, and that happens. And sometimes people just need, you know, an ear to listen to, and or, you know, for them to speak. So we'll take those things into consideration. And at that point, you know, I allow each member of my team to kind of do what they do. And, you know, they're each sensitive in their own way, and they all get a read. We definitely use different types of technology, ITC. And basically we try to correlate everything that we're getting. So from what I'm picking up psychically to what we're getting on the devices, and kind of coming to a conclusion at that point. Sometimes we have to go back to a location 2 or 3 times. You know, I'm not somebody that likes to you know, go once and think that we have all of the evidence we need. There's certain locations that we've investigated, you know, 15, 16, 17 times. And we take it into a research account so that we're gathering the research to find that evidence.
So with a collage of team members with various gifts, how do you present evidence to the client? Is it as experiences, or do you like EVPs or, you know, pictures, that kind of thing, or is it, you know, is it the scientific side, or is it kind of, do you give them what you've experienced as well? How does that relate to the client?
So a little bit of both. We differ a little bit because when we do our investigation, especially if it's a residential or if it's a personal case, if it's not a business or it's not something that, you know, people want advertised, we allow our clients to stay with us. We ask that children and animal be removed from the location because we don't want to stress anybody out. But if the person experiencing the haunting or the activity is there, we actually encourage them to stay, because in my experience, the most important thing is to understand your own power. And if somebody approaches me and they are terrified, I want to show them that they don't need to be afraid. Unfortunately, TV sensationalizes a lot of this stuff, and it gives us our worst case scenario, and it makes people afraid. Now, there are demonic cases. There are certain malevolent cases that I definitely ask if somebody's been physically harmed. I had a demonic case I worked with the diocese with, this person was thrown down the stairs and broken her legs. She was burned. She was like, there was a lot going on. So obviously in that scenario, I'm like, you need to leave until we can get this safe for you again. But if it's a typical haunting, then we encourage them, stay with us, learn how the equipment works. We're willing to show you that you do. And it's at that point, with the active intent and the fact of the matter that they're not frightened anymore, that they in fact are able to get rid of these spirits. So at the end of our investigations, lots of times we'll do cleansings or we'll do rituals to make sure that everybody's respected and happy, and we encourage the clients to get involved with it. So if I go to cleanse a property, I show them how to do it at the same time, because again, the active intent in my experience is the most powerful thing. Right? Anybody can say get out, but if they're attached to that person, it's that person that has to break that tetherment.
Is that ever true? Another thing I wanted to say too, Katie, because you're absolutely right. A lot of times too, when a client is removed and everybody is removed from the premises, nothing happens because, of course, the client is, maybe the key person. And if the client is there, then other things can happen. And you're right, getting them involved is so important. I like that, because a lot of paranormal teams, they really insist on nobody being there. They want it to be like Ghost Hunters, where everybody's removed. They really, it's crazy, but they want it to be like TV. It's not like TV.
I think too, like, we're not somebody, I don't post evidence online. I don't need to show pictures of what we get. There's certain places that we have shown those things. And if any paranormal team says that they're not interested in collecting evidence, I think that's kind of a fib. Of course, we all want the Holy Grail, right? We're all looking for that perfect piece of evidence. But bottom line, it's about the people. It's about and sometimes it's about the spirits. So I have a prioritization. The people living is my number one priority, and then the people that are dead is my second priority above everything else. If somebody is stuck, or if somebody is really trying to get that communication across to the loved one that's living, then that's what I want to do. Sometimes it's just one thing that entity is trying to say in order to cross over, that we can get that through. And or it's even the fact that they're wanting that acknowledgement that in fact they are okay. They are, this individual, they've been frustrated because they're shaking paintings and throwing glasses, and all the living person is doing is being frightened. And so once we can correlate that and say, look, it's Aunt Anne, she just wants to let you know she's okay. This is her voice on an EVP or through the spirit box. Psychically, I'm telling you what she looks like. Once we can get all of those things in place, the haunting stops. We don't even have to do a cleansing, because we've done our due diligence and been able to put the spirit at peace. Jewel at peace that's frightened, and all is well again.
When you see spirits personally, are you seeing them with your eyes, or do you see them, I guess, in your head is the best way to say it? And I don't mean in your head like crazy. I think you know what I'm talking about. Are you seeing them visually, or are you seeing them, or do they appear just to you within your own mind? Like,
a little bit of both. So I get a download. I call it a download. I download what they look like. They give me their images. Sometimes it's movies, sometimes it's pictures, and sometimes they're standing before me. So it just depends on how thick the energy is. I explain it like sometimes it's bad cell service. Sometimes, it's crackly and I have to kind of, put my antenna up that much higher in order to receive that download or that information. And sometimes it's if they're standing right beside me. It always comes different. It's never the same.
Okay. Oh, I think
That's really interesting. I like that. Katie, I want to ask you a question, because, everybody asks this question, but I think it's important. Do you have a particular case that stands out in your mind, something that maybe was particularly maybe frightening to you? And as a paranormal investigator, and we're all kind of paranormal investigators here, so I know what it's like. But honestly, is there any case that stands out that you can say, oh gosh, yeah, this one was either baffling or terrifying or both? Is there something that stood out?
Yes. So one particular case, we had a woman contact us, and she described that she allegedly was having some sort of activity with some sort of lizard-like being. And of course, we go with open minds, but we have to rule out mental health. We correlate with each interviewee, what the evidence was, what they feel they saw, and so on. The 10-month-old was being scratched in the bathtub, and there were hand marks, and there was a lot going on. And so we set up our equipment, and we started to investigate. And the location happened to be it used to be a 2-story house. And what they did was they ended up restructuring the house and leaving the second story, but leaving it as an attic and making it into a bungalow. So when you go through the attic boards, you would all of a sudden be in the second floor that you didn't realize was there. And all the paint was peeling. And I mean, it looked like a horror movie, let's be honest. Right. So, I had ended up getting scratched, and I never physically saw this entity, but I could tell that there was something not right. And so we had taken a static night vision camera, a full spectrum camera, and I had put it up into the attic, and I was pointing it down the hallway to see if we could capture anything. And it was at the point that we were going to tear down after the investigation that I had gone up, and of course, the one time I don't bring a flashlight, go figure. I had the occupant of the home actually came with me, and I had another investigator with me. And as the occupant had gone down the hallway, I allowed her to hold the spirit box. I had turned to my right to pick up that static night vision camera. That when I turned around, I saw these green glowing eyes. I witnessed it. The occupant of the owner of the house witnessed it, as well as my other investigators. So it wasn't something that was, optical illusion, or we all saw it. And not only did we see it, but we watched it move, and it hovered. It was at that point that through the spirit box, we heard it screaming, "Get back." And we actually saw it. We saw this lizard-like thing. The only way I can describe it to you. Well, who knew you could fly down a set of stairs? But the investigator and the owner went, and as they went, the latch for the attic closed. And so I was upstairs in the pitch black with nothing but a little, night vision screen and these eyes glowing at me. And that is one I will never forget. We ended up, it was giggling like a little girl. It was hissing. It was growling. It was something that to this day, I've never experienced again, and I can't explain, but I know it was there. And they ended up having to move from that house.
What do you
How
think?
did you get down? Like, were you able to just open the latch and go down after, or like what?
Oh, yeah.
Or did you have you must have been, I can't even imagine, like, I'd be like, oh my God, like how, like you just be paranoid, like frozen, I think.
So what I did immediately, what I do when I feel overwhelmed, I was like, surround myself in white. I was like, okay, shields up. I said, listen, when we go into an investigation, we go very respectful. So we don't taunt, we're not badgering, we're not disrespectful. Mm-hmm. So basically I reiterated that. And I said to them, I'm not here to cause any problems. I am not here to disrespect you or to harm you. I expect the same in return. We're simply here to document, communicate, find out why you're here. I am just going to exit now. And I basically backed out and said, like, salute, And so once I got down the stairs, we ended up cleansing the home. I will be honest, I did not re-enter the attic. Was not my thing. But we did seal it. We did cleanse it and seal it. And we left, and the occupants ended up moving out, and so much is history.
Wow. What do you think it was?
I don't know if it was interdimensional. I don't think it was extraterrestrial. I really, after that incident, I talked to a lot of my MUFON friends, and I really tried to, I mean, they weren't there, right? And the only thing documented was the eyes. We couldn't get that being on camera. So I think it was interdimensional. I really think it was something like a lower dimensional being. I would call it like an ancient basically, some sort of elemental. It was not obviously something human. I wouldn't consider it a shapeshifter or anything like that. There was more to it than that.
Right.
Was there a change in the environment? I suppose at that time you probably wasn't paying much attention to it, but was there a kind of like a smell? Was there like a change in temperature or anything like that?
So no, believe it or not, nothing that we could usually do temperature reads. There was no major temperature flux. We use a FLIR as well as temperature gauges. There was no major flux and change. The only thing now, again, the change in smell, understandable, but because this was an attic, there was a scent anyway. So we don't know if it was the entity or if it was the scent of the attic, but there was definitely a scent there. I would not call it sulfur. I would not call it, it wasn't rotting. It wasn't your typical demonic situation. It was like a musty smell.
Was it going back to the origin of the case? Did those clients move into that place and it started happening, or did it?
This is the strange thing. It just suddenly showed up. They had not. I go through when we do our interview. Did you purchase anything? Did you get anything used? Did you dig anything up? Did you renovate? Was there anything that would have changed? The only thing, which is really crazy, 3 weeks after we did that case, the occupant of the home was diagnosed with cancer. She was a healthy 32-year-old woman that ended up developing cancer. Now, she has since overcome that. She's healthy. She's back to normal. But we never knew if that had anything to play with. I'm a firm believer that sometimes entities can manifest that stuff. If it's evil enough, it can cause it. Lynda and I have a colleague from Paranormal Survivor that unfortunately passed. And I'm a firm believer it was due to paranormal activity that she passed.
Interesting.
That's crazy, right? Also, it's interesting that you say that, Katie, because I worked a case once where a similar thing occurred. There was some sort of entity that manifested, and it was a nasty entity. And again, the homeowner did contract some form of cancer, and she absolutely felt that she manifested whatever it was that was there. So I don't know whether that's true, but I mean, if you think about, poltergeist activity, sometimes that is a manifestation, of course, of what's going on, pubescent angst and all of that. So you never know. I mean, it could be that this particular entity was a manifestation of some form of cancer or something like that. I mean, gosh, that's why we do this, though, because let's face it, we do this because we're curious and things happen that people can't explain. But that's pretty weird. I can just imagine you running.
Yeah, I ran. I'm not, nobody needs to be a hero. I ran. I'm not afraid to admit that. Yeah.
Oh my God. So, okay, I know I'm asking too many questions, but I have another question for you. So you started a paranormal team. Are they the same people that you started with, or have you gone through some sort of morphing of that as well?
So there's a few core people that have stayed with me for many years now. But, people move, people change, people, I get a lot of people that I want to join your team. And then they realize that it's actually very monotonous. And sometimes it's hours of not getting anything or, what do you mean I have to go over evidence? It's like, yep, that's part of it. If you wear a recorder for 5 hours, you got to listen to 5 hours worth of audio. So, I'm pretty lucky, though. I have to say the bunch that I have now are amazing, amazing individuals. They're all dedicated. They're all passionate about it. And, even past people, not everybody leaves on bad terms. I don't think anybody's left on bad terms, actually. But, their priorities change. Sometimes it's not for them, or they have to move, or work's gotten too hectic, or the children. So I'm really lucky. I've heard some horror stories, but I'm really lucky.
Do you have a large team right now?
We have, there's 4 core members right now. I had 6 core members, and then we have people that come when they can. We have 4 core members now, and, you know, that's basically what we've stuck to. We've had many people asking us to join, but once you get that groove, you almost don't want to ruin that groove because, you know, we all know what each other needs to do, right? We all know where we're, you know, one's doing equipment, one's doing interviews, one's doing the history of the place, one's doing, so, we try to stick to a small number.
That's good. Yeah. And I think it helps too, because there's a lot more, I guess just that camaraderie as well. Like you're not trying to figure out, you know, that, okay, this person's behavior, their habits, or anything like that. You already know it. It's already there. You know, and you have that trust within the group, which makes such a big difference. Such a big difference.
And it's, I think it is so important. We forget, we get so excited about all the equipment. And I'm the first one to admit, if there's a new gadget coming out, I want to know all about it, how it works. I developed my own portal. You know, I've done experiments with I've engineered some of my own EM pumps, and I'm a sponge for knowledge. I'm trying to get to know as much as possible. But we forget to use our intuition and our energies and, you know, our emotions. And so, you know, knowing how somebody is going to react to something, understanding their personality, and realizing that perhaps they're not being as they normally are can be paranormal activity in itself, right? So knowing that individual inside and out, knowing how they normally react to things helps. I had a case where one of my investigators was taken over and she blacked out. Like she was just, I'm going, Kat, are you okay? She was not in there. Had I not known her personally, you would write that off. You think, oh, she's just having a bad day. But I knew, not even as a psychic, but as a friend, that there was something going on with this individual. And so it's important because it follows you home. We've had cases where 3-4 days after, you know, it's affected not only myself, but the whole team.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a kind of a sidebar comment in relation to what you just said. I think in relation to when I first started 20-something years ago, and to where we are now, I think that everyone gets so bombarded with technology. Everyone's forgotten the basics of what we should be doing, using, you know, the basic senses we have just gets thrown out the window because someone's walking around the house, you know, with a device that they don't know how to operate. And that's kind of, it defines the whole object of what we're trying to achieve.
Agreed 100%. Some of the old technology is not necessarily bad technology. You know, some of the old ways of doing things are just as effective. I mean, a lot of people are going back to analog. A lot of people are going back to the old stone tape theory because you get great evidence. Hans Holzer picked up a lot of great evidence through that. And so it's not always about the fancy gadgets. It's how you use them. A lot of, like you said, a lot of the stuff that we use today, people don't even know 1/8 of how to utilize that equipment, especially EMF meters. If you know, people knew how EMF works. You know, it's not just one direction. You have to go in many directions. And I always try and correlate fake EMF spikes with another EMF meter. I always have 2 or 3 different types of meters going at once because you get that. Shut your cell phones off. You know, do your sweep first. There's a lot of things that need to be done to make sure you're actually getting what you think you're getting.
Yeah.
Exactly. Set up the baseline too. Just
you got it. Yeah.
I've had amazing results just with the like a temperature gauge. You know, especially asking, like, just raise it up by, like, you know, 2 or 3 degrees. It goes up. Raise it down, go down. And I mean, you know, and this is within short time periods, not hours. Like, okay, can you go up to 25? Okay, can you bring it down to 20? Can you do this? Can you do that? And they do it. You know, I've seen some amazing stuff with that. And that's more exciting than, you know, some of the
absolutely
they have out there. Yeah.
The thing is about temperature, you're aware of the variables that can cause the temperature to go up and down naturally. Like, for example, if the temperature goes up, you could say, oh, is the heating come on? You know, that kind of thing. Or
exactly.
Temperature drops as someone opened the door and stuff like that. You could be aware of the environmental factors, but with things like EMF. There's just so many things that can make that spike naturally. We generally, like, I don't use EMF. I find it redundant. But personally, and other guys that I know in the field, it's just temperature, because you can control it, and it's a simple device, a thermometer. It's not it's not like an obvious that spits out random words from a microchip. It's a thermometer. It's foolproof in that respect. It's yeah.
We have a question for you, Katie. Nami is asking, I missed the beginning of the show, but do you do a prayer or some sort of routine for protection before and after the investigations?
So yes, we do. I carry a lot of stuff with me. I call it my little exorcist bag. So it's got all my cleansing stuff in it. And depending on the situation, if you're walking into an Aboriginal scenario, holy water is not going to be as effective, right? If you're walking into a hoodoo voodoo situation or black magic, or I like to have all my bases covered to make sure that not only am I safe, but the space is respected. So I use lots of crystals. We have, holy water, pagan water, Palo Santo, sage, frankincense, mugwort, all sorts. Like, I could go on and on, depending on the scenario we're getting into.
Right.
If it's something demonic, then we go a little more. And usually if it's demonic, I work with the diocese, so I'll have, somebody in mind that I'll say, okay, this is above my pay grade, or this is what I got, this is what you need to do. And we kind of go from there. The key is, it doesn't matter how prepared you think you are, you never know what you're walking into. And so, I often use the analogy, when you first move into your house, when you sweep the floor and mop the floor to make it clean, it doesn't mean that the mud and the dirt's not going to come back. You have to consistently keep yourself cleansing. So when I call it scripts, but when I tell, write people prescriptions for, cleansing, I don't just say, throw some sage around and you're good to go. Like, sometimes I'll say, do it 7 days in a row at different times. Do this, do that, to make sure that you not only is the space being cleansed, but you're cleansing yourself. So it just depends on the level of the haunting or the activity.
Okay. Have you dealt with hoodoo cases or voodoo or black magic?
I have.
You have.
Right?
Yes. That really fast. We haven't dealt with anything like that, in our team. Can you tell us something about that? Like, tell us something, like maybe one of the cases or anything like that?
Yeah, so there was a case that I worked, it was a long distance case that I worked on, where these people decided to buy this book. And some guy was selling this book in a glass case. That should have been your red flag. And so after they had bought the book, they had it on their shelf for about 4 months. And it was at that point that their toddler at the time actually pulled the book off the shelf and broke the case. And that's when stuff hit the fan. And there was a lot going on. She was dragged out of the house. Like stuff you'd think would be in horror stories. And it took a lot. And what we discovered was it was actually a satanic ritual book. It was an evil book. And just an FYI, people, it's not always evil, but in this case it was. And it took a lot, and they wanted to burn the book. I said, no, don't do that. Don't. And so we had to go through some rituals of cleansings, and there was a local white witch, I'll call her, that was able to look after it and kind of get it cleansed. So basically resealed it. Almost like a DivX box. They were able to reseal it, and all went back to normal. So,
wow, that's
amazing. I like that. You know what, Katie? You're so right, though, in that you have to be prepared for anything, because you never know what the hell you're going to walk into. Plus, I think it's educating yourself on a lot of different things. I mean, for example, if you go in, you're right, to a person's home and they're staunch Catholics, I mean, you have to respect that. You have to do what you do with integrity. If you walk into a home and you realize that, they're of a different religious persuasion, you have to know a little bit about what you're stepping into. So, I mean, I admire that you do that research and you do what you do, because that's so important. And so many paranormal teams don't do that. I mean, you're right. They'll say, no, you got a sage.
Yeah. And that'll be it.
No.
I got to come in there and kick everything out. I'm going to go into here and do this. And, I'm going to bring my troll dolls and do a dance and whatever.
It's unfortunately, I think it's misinformation. Again, television sensationalizes. You have to realize Hollywood has a place, and that's okay. But it's not always worst case scenario, and it's not always demonic. I mean, I have done hundreds. I can't even count the amount of cases I've done, and I can count on one hand the amount of actual demonic situations I've gotten into. Demons, they're lazy. They don't want, they're not gonna, mark the Trinity and all that. No, that's something else trying to intimidate you. In my experience, they want to make you crazy. They slowly make you second guess yourself. Because basically they're trying to steal your soul. Essentially, they're trying to break you down, and so they're not going to jump out and go, "Ooh, demon here." They're going to be doing things slowly and subtly to get to you.
Sounds like being married,
right? But not every. I guess the moral of the story is that not every little girl that you run into, that's little girl spirit, is a little girl spirit. Yeah. They're not going to present themselves to scare you in a bad way. They're going to try to manipulate you to allow access so that you invite them in, because let's face it, malevolent energy needs an invitation, right? Consciously or subconsciously.
That's so true. We've had so many cases where it starts off with the family, and usually the mother, that will be like, oh, but I know it's a child and I invited it to stay. And as long as it behaves itself, and you're just like, oh. And you just know as soon as you're like, oh, we got our work cut out for us. Like, oh, here we go. You're just like, oh no,
Yeah. I think it's good when, if you want to start investigating, I never discourage that, but you have to ask yourself why you want to do it. And I differ ghost hunters to paranormal investigators. And I know it's a play on words, but some people simply ghost hunt to gain evidence, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't toy with people's emotions. Don't go into a house and claim. We've cleaned up more messes from other paranormal teams, and that not to sound, I don't mean to sound arrogant in that regard, but they just don't understand. They get a new gadget and they think, let's go and communicate, and you're opening Pandora's box. And so not only are you causing issues for the family that you're going into, but you can bring something home.
Oh yeah.
And it causes, and it doesn't necessarily hurt you the next day, but it causes financial crisis and vehicles breaking down, and there's so many things that can occur if you don't take things and do things properly.
And if you don't show respect, no matter where it is, whether it's somebody's home or whether, it's a graveyard or whatever it is, that they just think it's a big, fun, exciting adventure, and they're going to be Zach Bagans and screaming and yelling and doing all kinds of, crap. But they forget that fundamental respect to begin with.
Lynda and I we actually went to a psychiatric hospital last year. It was a really cool experience. We had such a blast. There's multiple teams there. And there was one specific spot that we were doing the investigation, and we did an EVP session. And one of my investigators was holding a gun, holding a flashlight, but it was like a gun, right? Point and shoot. Yeah. And in the EVP, we were asking them to communicate with us, and they wouldn't, because they thought we were holding guns. They were like, "No, you're holding guns." And we were like, "Oh," we had to explain to them that no, it's simply a flashlight, and this is what it does. Please don't be afraid of it. And it was at that point that they kind of giggled and started talking to us. So, sometimes they're just as apprehensive to communicate as we are.
Right.
That's true. Yeah. And there's so many issues of subtleties in the environment that so many people are not really attuned to. And that's something as a paranormal investigator that, you really have to understand. You can't really go into it sort of without any kind of integrity or open-mindedness. And I think, you're right, Katie, that was a weird place, because we got interesting things as well. And because it was a psychiatric hospital, there were subtleties in the environment that you really had to be aware of. And that was cool. I think we all need to go back. I think we need to bring
I'm there.
and Cathryn with us.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah.
I'd be like, right.
Get me out of BC, because it's very stagnant in BC with regard to locations. There's no history here in comparison to the East Coast, that's for sure. And it's just, there's nothing here.
We've had to, we've had to clean up a lot of messes here too. You know, we've had teams where they went into, especially historical places, and they messed it up so bad, or just created so much garbage, or it just became a spectacle where, you know, whether there was evidence or no evidence, or whether the evidence was fabricated or whatever it was, you know, the owners of the establishments are like, no, we don't want anything to do with this. We would love to have a team in, but, you know, they lose that trust because of previous experiences. And, you know, thankfully, I mean, actually, that's how I met Peter, was because he had said, like, your reputation is ahead of you guys. So that's, I remember when he approached us, and, you know, and to hear that, you know, from people that have been doing it for a long time, that means a lot to a team that's going out and doing their best to maintain that respect, not only for the client, but, you know, for those who have passed over, and just to maintain that element of respect for the industry in general.
I think it's a misconception in relation to blaming TV a lot of the times on, you know, bad ghost hunters. I categorize them as ghost hunters, like thrill seekers and stuff like that, because they're not, by definition, a paranormal investigator. Like, even before, you know, the lights of Ghost Adventures, or, you know, all the other shows and stuff like that came along, stuff like that was going on, even in the early days. It just got more popularized because of TV. And that's kind of where we are now. And it's easy now just to point the finger at, you know, at Ghost Adventures and stuff like that, which, you know, people really shouldn't be paying much attention to things like that anyway, because it's just entertainment.
Yeah.
Agreed. That's true. Katie, question for you. If you were a beginner paranormal investigator, and maybe some beginners are watching tonight, what would be your advice to somebody just brand new starting out?
I really think it's important to find a mentor, respectable team that you can jump into. You know, find a respectable team that you can learn from. Do not go in blind. Again, I think that you can take more home than you think. And I think it's important to do your own research. Really research why you want to be an investigator, what you're looking for. Because again, if you walk into a situation that you don't know how to get out of, it can cause a lot of problems. You know, there's the word para-unity is kind of used lightly, but there's a lot of networks of people. You know, I tell people you're more than welcome to contact me if I can put you in the right direction. And through the Pun Network that my friend Richard and I have a show on the Pun Network, and they do the same thing. There's over 40 teams in all continents that we can direct you to, that are respectable investigative teams that aren't there to just, you know, razz something. They're actually there to find evidence, or to build that communication. So I just think it's important to find somebody that knows what they're doing.
Good advice. Really good advice. Honestly.
Thank you.
Totally. Has there ever been a case that you couldn't solve, or that you decided not to accept because of specific reasons?
So there's a local haunt that has urban legend to it, and we've been there. It's a countless amount of times, but if people feel like Googling it, it's called Buck Hill Road, and I talk about it a lot on our show. And we consider it research now. We go, and it's an alleged haunted location that the urban legend states that a little girl went out. There's two different variant stories, but one of the main stories is that a little girl went out and she lost her dog, and she never came back in a snowstorm. And so the father in death is still looking for his daughter. And if you park along this road, and this road is in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road, and you park, it's very hilly, and when you go up to the peak and you turn around and park with your headlights down and you flash your headlight, you will see the man in the lantern come up, and you will see this light. We've done extensive background history research on this location. Nothing is substantiated in those urban legends. However, we have spent thousands of hours investigating with the police, with different teams, with different, people present. And there's most definitely, I would consider it a portal. There's a lot of things that come through. We've had EMF spikes. You have to understand there's nothing around that would cause that. Of over 200 quick EMF spikes. We've had communications in all different languages. We've had communications where we've snapped hundreds of photos of partial apparitions, full body apparitions. I've had my windows smashed. I've had so many things that have occurred at this location, and we still can't figure out what it is. Is there extraterrestrial origin? Is there there's so much going on, and I would consider it a portal. There's so much energy there that everything feeds off of it. And so you never know what you're going to get when you go there. We've witnessed this light multiple times. In my opinion, in my psychic opinion, my investigator opinion, and personal opinion, do not think it's a man with a lantern. There's more to it. It's certainly intelligent. We've experimented with sounds, vibrations, different types of equipment, and it likes that. It's intelligent. It will come closer and it will go away. So there's definitely something there that I can't explain.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess this is the $50,000 question. What do you think?
No, I don't know the lottery numbers.
What do you think's out there? I mean, do you your theory behind it? Do you think it's categorized as residual, intelligent, elemental, negative? What do you think? Because there's each case differs and stuff like that. But do you have a category or theory behind how or what's there, or do you think that there's different elements to what happens
at this location at Black Hill Road?
No, just as an overall, and I know it's a kind of it's very a vast question, but do you think is it specific to one thing, or is it is there a multitude of different reasons behind hauntings and stuff like that?
I think the common denominator in all of these hauntings is energy. I think energy, the universal consciousness, I think, universal energy, I think vibrational frequencies, I think it all comes together. So, as a psychic, I try to explain to people that time is what we perceive in the physical realm. There's no such thing as time on the other side. And I think at certain points during a vibrational frequency, we're able to tap into the past. We're able to tap into timelines. We're able to actually witness and feel these things. So put it into perspective like a radio wave. Once a radio wave goes out in the air, there have been ham radio operators that have been able to pick up World War II. Energy comes through. And so I'm a firm believer that while we perceive it as linear time, as we age, really it's all together. Residual energy is that time loop that is overplayed, but it's still time happening now. Intelligent haunting's the same thing. I think that there's such a thin veil between this side and the other side that we're able to tap into that. That's where deja vu comes in, and certain different elements that we're experiencing. The Mandela effect puts a perfect play on how time changes.
Oh yeah.
It's how we perceive time. So,
and there's been a lot more.
Thing I can't.
I don't know if you've noticed, I've noticed a lot more of that Mandela effect happening in the last few years, especially. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, where that switch, it's like something is just switched off and, something else is switched on. And I found that, even on personal things, it's like I could have sworn that this said this, where this is happening here. And you're like, okay, am I crazy? Like what the hell just happened? Like, I know that it said this, but I'm seeing this, and you're getting a lot more of that. And even when it's, even within the family, or like me with one of my kids, it's like, I could have sworn that box said this. Well, it did say that, but it's not saying that now. Like, what the hell is going on? Right.
It's a change in the matrix. I really believe that, energy is vibrational, and things change. The table that I'm sitting at, the door that you open is a vibrational frequency. Yeah. It's a denser vibration, but the bottom line is a vibration. And yourself, water, which is, fluid, it is not necessarily as dense, but it is moving. It's still something. You scoop it up and put it to something else. So it can evaporate. It can, it changes from liquid to vapor to this and that. It's the same type of thing. And so, to put one definition to it is pretty hard to do. But like you said, it changes constantly.
Yeah.
Good.
Amazing.
Well, thank you, Katie. We appreciate your time. And
thank you. I had an absolute blast.
Good. Okay.
You're always wonderful. Thank you so much.
It was such a pleasure to be able. Are you staying on a little bit after the show, or are you going right off?
I certainly can.
Okay, that would be awesome. So I guess thank you to everybody watching us today. Make sure you guys join us next Friday, same time, same place, where we will have another guest. Also, join me on my show at Oracle Intuitions. I'm going to have Lynda on as a guest this Sunday at 2:00 p.m. So I'm really excited about that. And